What's up, everybody? Not sure who's all going to be tuning in because we're not live from the courthouse with lots going on, but figured I'd tune in just wanted to check in with everybody and go over the story and just kind of talk about some things I've been up to and preview another story. There's just been, a lot to do, kind of a lot of loose ends to tie up after the sentencing. And, I mean, the case is over beyond the appeal and it's kind of time to wrap things up. But as I said in the last hearing or in the last live, I think there's more interest right now in the case than I've seen before. And there are a lot of people kind of new to it who didn't follow the trial really closely. So I am planning on doing some kind of recap on that later on. But I wanted to tie up the letters and get everything squared away with that. And, it kind of just takes a while because those 2 days in court were, I think everyone who sat through that would agree that was pretty just physically tolling. And, I'm not even personally involved in the case. I've got to imagine that friends and family who were there who weren't like used to sitting in court and stuff, that, not only emotionally is that tough for what they were sitting through, but just physically, like having to sit in that courtroom like that, it's kind of a lot. So I'm sure a lot of people had, hopefully a few days to rest, but there's just, like I said, a lot of loose ends to tie up with the letters and really the timing of the trial that I just watched with Smokey Robinson, the Smokey Robinson of Motown was, I mean, the timing couldn't have been worse just for me personally with everything I had going on and the things I wanted to do. But, you can't miss Smokey Robinson in court. So I spent Friday and Monday checking out that and have a really big, cool story to do on that, just on the case and him and his testimony, getting to see his testimony in court. He never testified in court before, which is pretty amazing that with all the business activities and not that anyone thinks he's a litigious guy or has anything like that. I remember a friend asked me what the case was about, and she added, I can't imagine him doing anything wrong, but I think he definitely has that persona to him. But just somebody as successful as he is with everything that he's been involved with over the years, it's kind of amazing that there never was like a lawsuit or something that made him go to court. But he really didn't want to settle with this guy who sued him. It was his former manager, and the manager thought he was due a commission from some live performances under the contract. So it was kind of I don't want to say it was complicated because it was only a one-page contract, but just the legal issues that they were wrestling with were, I want to be able to explain those. And the trial actually started during Lanez's sentencing, so I didn't see all of it. But I think what I'm going to do is after I get the story together to publish early next week, probably Monday, I'm going to arrange a live with Craig, my friend Craig, who's the Law 360 reporter. I see Craig all the time at trials. Like, we're always overlapping on cases. He's covered a lot of stuff that I've covered, and we always talk about cases all the time. He's a really smart guy and has tons of good insight. And it's good to just, as a reporter, have somebody to be able to talk to about stuff like that. And he saw the whole Smokey Robinson trial. Like, the Law 360 is not covering the Tory Lanez case, but so he was there for openings and the testimony of the manager who sued him, which was pretty critical testimony. So he's totally down to go live. And he's, like I said, we talk in the hallway all the time about cases. And I was like, we just need to start like live streaming our discussions or something. But he's interested in it. It's just a matter of getting the time to set it up, because he writes a lot of stories for Law 360 and is always going to various things. But I'll be able to get that set up hopefully next week. If somebody wants to know if Tory's sentence runs concurrently, it's 10 years, but some of it on top of that does run concurrently. He got 6 years for first-degree assault, 4 years for one of the enhancements, and that's consecutive. So that's the 10 years. But then the second charge was like, and I'm going to get this all in a final article, but the second charge was like negligent discharge. He got 2 years for that, and that's what was concurrent. So instead of getting 12 years total, he got 10 years, because the 6 and the 4 are consecutive, but then the 2 is concurrent. And then the third charge, actually, that was another 2 years, but instead of being concurrent, it was stayed. So I'm not really quite clear on the legal reasonings for all that, but we can we can get into that in the final story. The sentencing story that I have up on legalaffairsandtrials.com still says at the top, this article will be substantially updated. And I'm not changing that, damn it, because it's going to be. It's just might take a little while longer than I thought. But the big thing is the transcripts for the sentencing hearing. I'm going to be able to get those. The real court reporter, the one who's doing all the work in the courtroom, the one who's transcribing what they're saying, is still working on that. And she said the whole transcript is probably looking at about like $1,000, but that she can parcel stuff out too. So obviously the stuff that I absolutely want to get is Megan's statement and then Tory's statement. But Judge Hereford's final comments would be good. Judge Hereford's final comments would be great to get to, but I should be able to get most of that. Somebody wants to know why no one's talking about the ASAP Rocky case, and we're all so busy, but nothing's actually happened with it yet. But I think it is. Last time I checked, he had a preliminary hearing scheduled for August 24th, which is next week, and I'm definitely planning on covering that if it happens. Those things have a tendency to get delayed, but it does seem like the case is old enough that we are getting to the time where his preliminary hearing is going to happen. And that's when they present everything to the judge, and the judge decides whether there's like enough evidence to move on to a jury trial. I didn't cover the one that happened for Tory Lanez, but I know it did happen. And it's obviously a really big thing. I mean, you get to preview most of the evidence, if not all of it. And the judge is making a really big decision. So when it does happen, it will be really big, and there will be tons to talk about there. But right now, I actually haven't even looked up LA Superior Court, his case up there. I was going to do that this morning, but I've just like got so much other stuff to do. And I know right now there's nothing till the 24th, so we've kind of got a few days to plan it out. But for sure, we're gonna be covering that. The John Eastman thing, I'm kind of relieved that he asked to abate that. This is Trump's lawyer, who is a California lawyer, actually an Orange County guy, like covering Orange County litigation for the Daily Journal. I used to see John Eastman at events all the time. Like, he was kind of like the token Republican that they'd have at the events when they had Erwin Chemerinsky, who's like this prominent constitutional law scholar. He's the dean of Berkeley Law and a big leading liberal guy. But it was, looking back, it's kind of funny that they would have Eastman there to kind of balance that out, because, you know, compared to Chemerinsky, Eastman's not anybody. But he started representing Trump when he was at Chapman University. And for the most part, with the big political cases like the January 6th case, the Washington, D.C. stuff, I mean, there's so many reporters covering that, and they're D.C. based. They have access to the court. It's like their full-time job is to cover Trump stuff or January 6th. So I generally don't just try to jump on just random news like that. But the John Eastman stuff is local. And he had a big case where he actually challenged Chapman University, trying to, they were going to just hand over all his emails to the January 6th committee. So he sued to try to stop that. And it became a big case in Orange County that I covered. So I kind of feel like I have some ownership over the Eastman case, but he has a state bar proceeding happen where they're trying to disbar him, the California State Bar. And it's supposed to start next week. But now that he's been indicted in Georgia, and even before that, he cited Trump's DC indictment over the January 6th thing, because he's one of the unnamed co-conspirators in there. And he cites all that, saying that he wants to put the whole state bar hearing on hold because of his Fifth Amendment right. And all the reporters who've been covering that stupid state bar hearing back in June, when the judge just like couldn't get it done, and she's like, oh, let's reschedule this to August 22nd. It was like, what? He's going to be indicted by then. I mean, everybody knew that he was going to be indicted. So a lot of people thought he would be indicted in D.C. This is John Eastman. And the only one who's been indicted in D.C. is Trump. Eastman's an unnamed co-conspirator. But he was indicted in Georgia 2 nights ago. And he's charged with crimes in Georgia. And I mean, the idea that they can make him finish his state bar hearing and testify about all that stuff, like, as annoying as it is, as annoying as it is, it's not like they can actually make him do that. But one thing, it's just my right eye that I'm really nearsighted, so my left eye is fine, but the right eye, if I take off my glasses and I'm not like trying to have corrected vision, the eyes are fine. It's not like my eyes are like permanently like that. But when my right eye tries to adjust to the nearsightedness through this current prescription, it pulls in and leans over a little bit. So that's what you guys are seeing. But somebody was asking if I was going to like post stuff about the cases that I'm covering and what's coming up. And yeah, I don't know if there's like a way to really have like a regular hub like on the website or something, but definitely Twitter. And then I think it's a good idea to do these lives where I talk about the upcoming cases, because obviously ASAP Rocky's a priority. And I know I'm going to piss some people off when I do this, but there's an LA politician being sentenced on Monday, and I'm covering his sentencing, and I don't care if anyone doesn't know who he is. I covered his entire trial, and I'll definitely write the article to try to make it accessible to people who aren't aware. But it's a bribery scheme involving the University of Southern California, which I think is a good hook for a wider audience, because I think most people have heard of the University of Southern California, and the idea of like a politician being involved in like a bribery scheme with the dean is unusual. But I covered I covered his whole trial, and I like the white collar crime cases. But I do want to really embrace the celebrity LA reporting. I'd be kind of crazy not to. And start following I know the Lizzo lawsuit and all the litigation that happens up there. I'd like to prioritize, but I do want to still keep covering like big white collar criminal cases with the U.S. Attorney's Office, and not always just cover celebrity cases, because I think covering the other cases helps give you perspective on the celebrity cases. But let me see, I got some questions here. Somebody asks, if you don't mind, what made you want to do this type of journalism? Really, I've always been interested in political cases and courts and stuff, but it was always just kind of a dream, like an aspiration. When you're at the Spokesman Review and covering K through 12 schools, and then you move up to the night breaking news spot, that's how I got to know court reporting and police reporting. And you're always just kind of hoping that you get to do a big story and get to cover court. But it was the older reporters who were doing that at the Spokesman Reviews. So you just kind of have to work your way up to it. But when I moved down to California, I was just excited to get a job at the Orange County Register. And it was just a good opportunity to, get out of Boise, Idaho, Spokane, Washington, kind of the similarities of the Northwest, and move to not a completely different area of the country, because this is still the West Coast. But as somebody who lived up in the Northwest my whole life, it felt like a completely different area of the country. It was really exotic to live in South Orange County and get to know the communities down here. But my job was to cover the city of San Juan Capistrano and go to the city council meetings. And there was this weekly paper called the Capistrano Valley News that the Register put out. So I did that for a year and a half or so, and then moved up to cover the county board of supervisors. So I've always been interested in law and crime, but I just wasn't covering that too much at the Register, except for when I could. Like, there was a big murder in San Juan Capistrano that I covered. A guy killed his parents, Ashton Sachs. And there's been a lot of true crime shows on that. If people have seen me on like the Oxygen channel and stuff, it might be about that case. So you just kind of get in from that. But the big thing that made me feel like I was, a true legal affairs reporter was working at the Daily Journal for 4 years, the Los Angeles Daily Journal, the newspaper for lawyers that doesn't really have any kind of web presence, but is really well read by the judges and things like that. So did they put charges on the Sun? Oh, good. People are stoked about Mark Ridley-Thomas. Yeah, if the Lane stuff, that's the LA politician who was charged in the bribery scheme. No, the Sun was never charged, and I don't think you could say that the Sun really did anything, because he wasn't in the elected position. But the son of Mark Ridley-Thomas had resigned from his legislative spot, the California State Assembly, amid a sexual harassment investigation that was like right at the time of the Me Too movement when everybody was losing their jobs over it, and it was a big thing. So he resigned to prevent any kind of bigger story coming out. And Mark Ridley-Thomas wanted to preserve his legacy and preserve his son's legacy and get a good landing spot for him. So started leaning on the dean of the USC School of Social Services, School of Social Work, saying that he could get some contracts and steer some contracts their way. But they wanted the son to be admitted to USC graduate program and to get a professorship. And the trial was all about his lack of qualifications for this stuff and how the dean wasn't really sure that he deserved any of this stuff. But then as her interactions with Mark Ridley-Thomas went on, that all changed. And the dean actually never went to trial. She's 84, and she pleaded guilty to a felony bribery charge and was just sentenced a couple of weeks ago she got house arrest, 18 months house arrest. And the judge actually said she was considering putting her in prison. So prosecutors, if the Tory Lanez stuff hadn't been going on last week, I would have written an article about their sentencing papers and Mark Ridley-Thomas's sentencing papers. But my understanding is they're asking for 6 years, and I think he's asking for 21 months, 18 months. I gotta look, but it's gonna be. I need to email the clerk because he is gonna pack like 1,000 people into that sentencing hearing, and there's gonna be no place to sit. I'm gonna end up having to sit on like Matt Hamilton's lap. He's the LA Times reporter who covers it. And that happened during closing arguments. It was crazy packed in there. I didn't go to his motion for new trial, but there were tons of people there, like Gina Kim from Law 360 and Matt Hamilton both said it was crazy. So we're all just expecting like 1 million people there to be there. So, I mean, and where I live and just public transportation and everything, it's really kind of impossible for me to get to that courthouse before 7:30 a.m. And if the sentencing hearing's at 8:30, he's probably going to have people showing up at like 7. So I need to get out and email the clerk and see if there's any way she can try to reserve some seats for the press, which is common. Judges do that. They totally could. I'm sure there's going to be an overflow room set up. It's like, fuck that. We watched the whole trial. We want to see it from the courtroom. So, but the other reporters and I kind of feel like we're all in on the same thing. Let me see. Let me bring up the story that I did, the police chief story, because I think everyone's probably read that. And somebody said, did his son ever go to court for the allegations about sexual harassment? No, it started as just an investigation from the state legislature. And even after he resigned, the state assembly was still trying to investigate it. But I've never heard anything about like a final investigation. And there definitely have never been any criminal charges or any criminal investigation. But one thing, and like I said, if I hadn't had that Smokey Robinson trial, I would have had this other story done too. But I was just putting together one final story on all the letters that I'll just put the file up and everything. But when I was just looking at this police chief's letter, and, looking back at the last live when I went over this, I know somebody asked if all these letters were authentic. And I overall was like, oh yeah, they seem fine. But looking back, I think that question did come around the time that this police chief's letter was on the screen. And yeah, no, there are some red flags about this police chief's letter. And I mean, it definitely looks like a form letter that's used for other habeas petitions for marijuana offenders and that kind of thing. And it was kind of transferred. The template was kind of transferred over and used for Lanez's thing. Most of the other letters seem totally authentic, but this one does seem to be like, does this guy actually, their signatures aren't on there. But the thing is, I reached out to 3 of them are pretty easy to get a hold of. Their contact information is out there. And I emailed them all Saturday. And I wanted to get the story out sooner. I mean, if I was kind of planning to just have it go out on Monday morning, but I also wanted to make sure they all had a chance to respond, because while they could have responded on Sunday. I mean, most people aren't working, but Monday is the day that you could kind of expect a response to that if you're going to get it. And I didn't hear back from any of them. And actually the police chief viewed my LinkedIn profile. So he definitely has my email and knew I was trying to get a hold of him. So I just, it's weird, but I think with all the organizations that the other people who wrote support letters for Tory, I think that they are used to lobbying for leniency for marijuana offenders and other kind of state criminal cases under these new resentencing laws and George Gascon's new resentencing laws. So it seems like it all stems from that. Well, I mean, people seem interested in it. Like I said, we got to get all the letters out. And I had this all just as one big story. I was going to go through the other celebrities who had it, but this kind of just took on a life of its own. And somebody commented when I posted this story last night, they're like, wow, there's a lot going on in there. And there is. So I figured to have all of this stuff in here and then to add in the family letters, it was just going to be so much and unwieldy. I wanted to do a separate story on the other celebrity letters because I've tweeted about Mark John Jeffries and the other ones, but I haven't actually included them in the article. And actually, I did see some people asking about this on Twitter. Stefflon Dawn, she wrote it under her legal name, Stephanie Allen, I think is her last name. But she wrote one, and also the other rapper that people had brought up on Twitter, wondering if it was her. I think it's pronounced Mealy. She wrote one too, and that's going to be the focus of the article. But I'm also going to include some other family letters. It was just kind of going back and forth on like what exactly to include in there, because I mean, he's a celebrity, but his friends and his the mother of his child is a private citizen, and to just kind of plaster it all out there just seemed. But I am going to make the file available for everyone to view. And there's some what's interesting with this is anytime you get 76 letters from various people, some are going to be better written than others. And there's one in there that's like it's just really poignant. I mean, it's from a friend of Tory's. He's not famous at all, but and they call him Daystar, but it just talks about the loss, the emptiness in their lives without having him there. And it's really touching, but it just kind of serves as a really sad reminder of like the ripple effects of the criminal justice system and how it's way more than just the defendant and the victim who are affected by it. But it's a pretty powerful way that he phrases it in the end. Because, I mean, I've said before, my brother's been to prison 3 times. I mean, it's starting when I was 16, so it's not like I don't know anything about this. But the letters here, and this is what I'm like, who actually wrote this? I mean, it seems like it was probably, especially when you just look at his lawyers. I mean, Jose Baez is a trial lawyer from Miami, does high profile stuff, some celebrity stuff, but he also does, I don't want to say run of the mill, but other stuff like more regular cases, like regular people in Miami. Ed Wellborn, the Newport Beach guy, is a trial attorney and does cases at the trial level. So the one who does all the appellate work and has the appellate practice is Matthew Barhoma. So this is probably connected to them. But I mean, really, I encourage everyone to just go into the story and check it out. But I've always thought one key here and one clue if you're trying to figure out what's going on or what might have happened here is Iggy Azalea's tweet where she says that she thought it was just going to be for the judge's eyes only. And if that's true, which I really have no reason to doubt that, because especially when you read her letter, it seems pretty clear she didn't think that was going to be made public. But if Tory's lawyers didn't think these were going to be made public, I mean, yeah, I don't know. But like I said, I reached out to 3 of them are easy to get a hold of. They didn't respond to me, but the police chief, Erik Luna, who's only identified as a former San Diego prosecutor, but is currently at Arizona State University. And then also Kyle Kanza, who's the marijuana entrepreneur. His email address is pretty easy to find. And I haven't heard back at all. So I mean, I think if an article like this came out and they were surprised by it, like they didn't know that their names were on it or something, I mean, I probably would have heard from them or something. I think it's just they have affiliations with the criminal justice reform groups that Tory does work with. And it's one thing, they're all very marijuana focused, marijuana reform laws. And somebody pointed out, I actually added this into the article, that Lanez actually has a partnership with a marijuana company. It looks like they named a strain of weed after him, Black Leprechaun. But marijuana has never really come up in the proceedings. They mentioned it. It wasn't mentioned at all, I don't think, in the trial. It was all just about alcohol and the alcohol use that went on at the party. It was mentioned a bit in his 2-day sentencing hearing because they were talking about substance abuse, that kind of thing. But I just, and I kind of think the same way about alcohol, and Hereford made clear too. But I think it's so disingenuous to think that any of those people, like the people who wrote letters for Tory, or that Tory himself thinks that like smoking marijuana is bad, and that like people who smoke too much marijuana need to go to like rehab or something. It's like, no, dude, I don't think any of these people think there's anything wrong with smoking pot. But it wasn't mentioned much. It was all just about how he has an alcohol use disorder. They didn't really talk about marijuana misuse at all. And I remember when I think it's pronounced Reina, but that was before his courtroom engagement announcement. But the mother of Kai, they've known each other since 6th grade, when she was talking about his use of alcohol and that kind of thing, I think Baez asked something about marijuana use, said, was there marijuana involved? And she said, oh, well, that was just constant. I mean, I don't think anyone really genuinely thinks that there's something wrong with him smoking pot and that he needs to like stop. But yeah, I wanted to get into a little bit. I mean, it was just so random. I'm like, who is this guy? I mean, the city of New Haven the police department's got to be like a 3-man operation or something, or a 4-person operation. And he's clearly trying to get the hell out of there. I mean, when you Google him, he's applied for like every single police job in the Midwest that has probably been open in the last 2 years. He was a finalist just a few months ago in Dodge City, Iowa. I meant to answer this earlier. Somebody asked if it's if it ever creeps me out when people like view my LinkedIn profile, and no, because I mean that's what it's for, and especially I think I viewed his profile too. So if people view my profile, sometimes I'll do that. So it's a very public thing. Like, so it's not like he's seen anything like personal in there. And really, it was a good clue for me because I want to be fair to these people. I don't want to just rush out some article where it's, I emailed him, but it was like buried in his inbox and he never really got a chance to see it because he doesn't check his email. But to me, when he checked my LinkedIn profile, it was like confirmation that, okay, he knows this article is coming. He's had plenty of chance to respond. He knows I want to talk to him. I mean, I appreciated that he did that, actually. But Courtney Curtis, who's a he, from Ferguson. Because at first, when you see this, it's like, well, is there some kind of connection to Ferguson? But it's crazy that Ferguson was now so long ago. It was 9 years ago now. And I mean, New Haven is like 65 miles from Ferguson, but I mean, Hammann has been the police chief there since 2018, which was four years afterwards. So I think it's just more the marijuana reform movement. And, let's be real. These guys are being paid for writing these letters and being advocates in the system. And they probably go to conferences. Like I said, if you Google Chris Hammann, he's been outspoken on marijuana laws in Missouri. So you go to these criminal justice reform conferences and make contacts, and it's all a big money business. It's a money thing. Because some people, I saw some talk online about, does Tory owe his lawyers money? And I have no idea. And that's in the end just a private business decision. But just from what happened last week and the timing, I mean, I'm sure he had to give Baez and those guys something after the hearing. I'm not sure what their billing would be worked out with him, because he probably had a set rate with Baez. I don't know what the amount would be, but it's just a set rate to do the hearing. But like the substance abuse consultant that worked for him, she might not have. She probably has a set rate for the assessment, but she probably was charging hourly for the court time. And that's why for Hereford to just let it like stretch out like that. But I mean, Tory was paying for all those people to sit there, so he would owe some money after that. Whether he paid it or not, I have no idea. I mean, that's just a private business thing between them. But I did hear that his notice of appeal has been filed. There's not actually a case yet. At least when I checked this morning, there wasn't in the appellate court. But I'm sure that's just the clerk is working on that right now. But the notice of appeal is basically just like a form that they fill out. There isn't any real work that they have to put into it. So the big thing will be the opening brief, which really might not be filed for like a year. I mean, it could be at least 6 months or a year. And I'd be surprised if Baez stayed on the case like that, because they really just need like a California appellate lawyer to work on it. But one thing we haven't seen is a bail hearing, any kind of motion for bail. So yeah, somebody's asking about, and I've seen, and it's like it's hard not to kind of just see that as when people are just reading the transcripts of Megann's testimony. They're not putting the whole transcript online unless I haven't seen it. They're not reading the whole thing. I mean, they're basically just doing that to harass her. But in the end, it's not just one sentence of her testimony or one part of her testimony that made the whole case. It was the entire trial all put together, everyone else's testimony, the opening, the closings, and it was 12 jurors who aren't all gassed up on Instagram shade room comments and, just Tory super fans reading it. Like, that's why I won't blame them for never coming forward, especially with all this shit going on. And if they ever did, I would advocate that they not use their full names. But I wish I could talk to some of the jurors on the case about how they actually saw it. And I talked about this in the articles, the 19th News especially, and it's just the way people are presenting the news, the news or the information, and the kind of disingenuity in how they present it. And they're like, "Oh, harassment? What are we doing here?" It's like, yeah, what the fuck ever, guys. You guys know exactly what you're doing. You're just trying to undermine. You're never ever going to accept what happened, no matter what. I mean, that's why, why don't you go get this? Why don't you go get this? Well, if somebody did, you still wouldn't believe it. I mean, it's just, you're just talking to the abyss here. And overall, I think we need to focus on the bigger story and the bigger people who are interested in this case. And like I said, I was surprised when after the verdict happened, so many people were like, so tell me this about the trial. And I'm just like, oh my God, the trial was like 8 months ago, guys. Like, I don't want to kind of takes a while to get into the details on that. I mean, it just to have to go back in time like that. It's like, let's get through the sentencing first, and then maybe we can do a final wrap up on the trial. But no, there hasn't been. I saw somebody asking if the bail motion has been filed, and I'm getting kind of a big chat here. So if people want to go into the super chat, that'd be great. But well, and it's like, and these people who are just going on, the facts don't line up with the story. It's like, dude, you weren't at the trial. You haven't read all the transcripts. That's what cross-examination is for. Meghann was subject to all of that. Her testimony was in open court. She was subject to cross-examination. There were tons of other witnesses that the trial is about. There's opening statements, there's closing arguments, there's deliberations, there's all the other evidence. What about the questions that they asked? The jurors asked some pretty pertinent questions. They asked to have a readback of Sean Kelly's testimony. They asked for a readback of the GSR testimony. They asked for readbacks of a lot of stuff. And maybe you guys should go back and find that if you're just going to spout all this shit off. I mean, it's just, it's dumb. And I'm not going to cater to it, but I do think there's kind of some final final words to be said. But one thing I want to do is when the appellate case actually comes up, and this will have to be next week, like after the Smokey Robinson live that I'm going to do with the Law 360 reporter, but kind of a final look at the appellate process. Because like I said, his notice of appeal is filed, but it's not, it's going to be like at least 6 months before there's anything substantive with it, like an actual brief filed. So really, there's just going to be nothing to talk about for a long time with that. But I think it would be helpful, and I think people would be interested in just talking about what is the appellate process. Like, I can even bring up screenshots showing what the appellate court, what the website looks like, how you can look up cases yourself. You can actually go in there and view arguments online. I'm pretty sure the second district, that's where Lanez's appeal will be filed. The second district has oral argument online. So when the oral argument on that actually happens, which could be like seriously a couple years, we'll be able to watch it as it happens online, or we'll be able to watch a recording of it later. But let me here. This is the second district court of appeal here. But you would just go search for case information here. And this is, you have this a little bit with LA Superior Court, but it's not quite as easy. But here, look up his name. And like I said, I looked it up this morning and didn't see anything. But it should be any day now. Like it should be today or tomorrow that his case actually gets filed. Because when I emailed the DA's office asking if the motion for bail was in, and they said no, but they said they did get the notice of appeal in the mail. So I'm not reporting that. Like I haven't tweeted that out yet, just because the real news is going to be when his actual when the case actually gets filed. Here. And so this is his case. When you, well, here, let me go back here. You go into the search and you type his legal name in, obviously, and look it up. And this is when Barhoma tried to get the judge disqualified and they appealed it. That right now, that's the only case that's actually in there. And that's not a good example of what Lanez's final appeal is going to look like, because that was like an unusual writ petition. But as soon as his case is filed, you'll see another entry like that. You can see the docket here. And the annoying thing is they have this nice system where you can see all the documents filed. You can watch the arguments online. But if you want to actually read the documents, you can't. They're not linked in here. And you can't get them at all. And this is when I actually had to go to LA and go into the appellate court to get it. But there's the petition for writ mandate, which that's the thing that you want to read. That would have all the substantive things in there. The motion to stay the proceedings. And this is all stuff that I wrote about back in pretrial. Like if you go to legalaffairsandtrials.com under the Tory Lanez tabs, there's a pretty substantive article on this whole thing. But 3 justices, or it's always 3, a panel of 3 that looks at it. But really, one thing I learned pretty extensively from working at the Daily Journal, because the Daily Journal profiles judges and justices. They try to profile everyone in the state at least once every 8 years. And it can be anybody, a trial court judge, federal judge, appellate justice. Judge Hereford has been profiled, of course. I mean, it's like a tradition for judges to be profiled, and they're usually pretty receptive to it. So I've profiled appellate justices, actually never a sitting one in LA, but I profiled a couple in Orange County and one in San Diego. And the big thing is they have research assistants, research attorneys who do all the initial work and present it to the justices, like at a conference or something, but they all have their own research attorneys. So the research attorneys are doing a lot of heavy lifting, reading through the cases and doing the analysis and just giving like a recitation of the laws on all sides to them. So it always starts with the research attorneys. But somebody asked if I'm going to cover the Girardi case. And yeah, definitely. Right now his team is asking to delay that. It's Tom Girardi, who's kind of more of the Bravo, Real Housewives of Beverly Hills crowd than the hip hop crowd. But he was a prominent lawyer in LA for a long time and married to Erica Jane, who was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And his mental competency hearing is supposed to be next week. He's charged in federal court with a bunch of wire fraud counts for ripping off his clients over the years. He had like a huge Ponzi scheme where he was embezzling money. This is Tom Girardi. And he's supposed to, he has Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and they're saying that it's his, basically the judge is supposed to decide whether he's competent to stand trial. So it's supposed to start on the 23rd. His lawyers have something in asking to delay it because looking back to the hearing that Judge Staten held with it a couple weeks ago, it was kind of like, okay, does she realize that this is a really big thing? It's not just going to be a one-day hearing. I mean, there's no way it could just be a one-day hearing. I covered a mental competency hearing for a serial killer in Idaho federal court like 10 years ago. And it was like a 2 or 3 week thing. It was a big, basically just a bench trial. And I don't know if Tom Girardi's would be that long, but it's definitely going to be longer than one day with all the experts that they have testifying. So at the time, Judge Staten was like, oh, we'll see how it goes. And if we need to have it more than one day, you know, it doesn't need to be consecutive, but we need to have it close together. But Girardi's lawyers filed something saying no, like basically telling Staten she needs to start taking this seriously. This is my last Tom Girardi story, and that they want it all continuous, that they want to find a time where they can schedule it for multiple days at a time. And last I checked, she hadn't ruled on that, but she should be ruling on that soon because it's supposed to start next week. And honestly, it would be nice for me if it was delayed because this is going to be a big thing to cover. And it's like, it's kind of been nonstop. I mean, I've got this final story that I want to do on the letters that I should be able to get done today. The Smokey Robinson story is a really big story. I want to get that done. And then we've got Mark Ridley-Thomas' sentencing on Monday. Hopefully that Eastman stuff gets delayed, which, like I said, I don't see how it doesn't. I don't see how he has continues his state bar hearing, and then the Girardi thing. So I think Girardi will probably get delayed, but we'll see. It's that's the funny thing is everyone agrees that he has some kind of form of dementia, but the prosecutors are saying that he's faking it. And I've seen other people in comments too, like the video of him walking into court for his arraignment. Somebody was like, this is like the greatest performance of Tom Girardi's life. I'm like, yeah. And yeah, but everyone agrees that he has some kind of base dementia level. He's like 82 or something, and he's staying in a home in Orange County. And there are videos of him online. I guess he was talking about at some law conference or something before the whole thing blew up on him, where he sounds like he has dementia, like he's all over the place. But somebody, it was funny that somebody brought up Girardi when I was talking about the Second District Court of Appeal, because people who have followed that really closely probably remember that. But he had an affair with an appellate justice for the Second District Court of Appeal, Trish Bigelow. And when his marriage was blowing up with Erica Jane, like right when the whole Ponzi scheme was falling apart, Erica Jane posted a bunch of texts between Tom and Trish Bigelow and was like, yeah, me, Judge Bigelow, she's the one having an affair with my man. Like, oh my God. And she deleted him, but of course all the E-Online, Bravo blogs have them and there's stories on it. And yeah, it became this big public thing that this appellate justice, who she was the chief justice for a while, had been having an affair with Tom Girardi. And LA Times had a really good article on the fact that Girardi had given her $300,000 to help her buy a condo over in I think Santa Monica or somewhere along the west side in LA. And Tom Girardi's firm is in bankruptcy. So there's a bankruptcy trustee who's going through all the money that he spent and trying to claw it back from people. And even people who didn't know that he was stealing money. It's just their only wrongdoing was taking money when they didn't really know the source of it. So any money that Tom spent on personal expenses, like using law firm money, the trustee is trying to go through and get the money back. So that's why the big thing has been Erica's earrings that you've heard so much about. She had this like $750,000 pair of diamond earrings that the trustee wanted to seize because Tom had actually bought it with law firm money that should have gone to his clients. But Trisha Bigelow got wrapped up in it. This is the appellate justice because Tom had actually given her some jewelry when they were having their 4-year affair. Here, let me. I did a story on it for Law and Crime because this was a perfect Law and Crime story, and I was like, God, the ads on Law and Crime are so obnoxious. There's so many of them all the time, but you can't really tell the Girardi story without, oh yeah, that appellate justice he was having an affair with. But the trustee who was selling off Erica's earrings, actually Trish Bigelow was given some jewelry by Girardi too, and just handed it over to the trustee. And her lawyer is actually Alan Jackson, who's a former DA, but he was Harvey Weinstein's lawyer, but actually is a good lawyer and knows what he's doing. But she handed over some jewelry to the trustee to pay off, just to avoid the fight. And then a couple weeks later, apparently she was like cleaning out her closet, and she found some more jewelry that Tom had given her that she'd like forgotten about. Let me close out of this video. Sorry, it's so annoying. That Tom had given her. So she like they had to file something else and like amend the auction proceedings to add those to it. But I haven't heard anything about the $300,000 that she supposedly that Girardi gave her for the house. But just the way things work with these bankruptcy proceedings and how the trustee works, if she can afford to just cut them a check for $300,000, she'd be foolish not to, because they absolutely will come after her for that. But you can hear Alan Jackson wouldn't respond to me, but I quoted his LA Times letter. Justice Bigelow does not want anything even potentially connected with monies Girardi took from his client victims. This is Alan Jackson explaining why Justice Bigelow just handed this stuff over. But reputation-wise, like, ouch. Because all these appellate justices retire and then go on to private mediation, like JAMS. JAMS is the big one, Judicial Arbitrators and Mediators. It was invented in Orange County, the private judging system. They make tons of money doing that. I mean, it's a huge bankroll for them. So I'm sure she's still going to be able to do that a little bit, but this is a pretty like humiliating thing. I mean, the idea, and there's so much competition in the mediation arbitration business, that having something like this out there is just like, yikes. Not only is it just totally embarrassing, it's like professionally like, wow. But I'm going to click out of this because, like I said, it's Law and Crime is so annoying with all their ads and stuff. But yeah, I wanted to get into the other letters that I was going to do. Let me see here, the final letters, the Stefflon Don and everything. Let me just get back to the final story here, the police chief story. Like I said, I encourage everybody to just go check it out and read it, but we'll get the final thing in there. And I was going to have all the letters just presented in one story, but there's just so many of them. And somebody already commented like, wow, there's a lot going on in this police chief story, that adding in the Stefflon Don, the other rapper, would have just been too much. But hopefully this afternoon or tomorrow morning, that's going to publish, and that will be it. But yeah, I think the kind of how the appellate process works would be good. We could even bring up a case. Actually, Lanez's attorney, Matthew Barhoma, recently did an appeal where he argued in front of the court. It was a video appearance via Zoom for a Fresno case appeal. So we could kind of walk through the news stories on that initial case. It was a guy, a tattoo shop owner, who shot to death a homeless man who was camping outside of his property, and went to trial and was convicted of murder. So took it on appeal and ended up losing the appeal. But Barhoma argued it, maybe a month ago or so. So we could kind of walk through the process. We could bring up the video and everything and show that to you. But It'll be interesting to see who the panel is assigned. I don't really have any insight to the LA justices, but I kind of want to avoid just like bringing up their names and like going through them, because it's like almost like putting a hit on them, especially in this case. I mean, the idea that there are a lot of appealable issues I think are we'll see, but they get tons of different cases, and like I said, the idea that it's the appellate justices are the ones guiding the initial thinking on things like early on. No, it's the research attorneys who do all that stuff, and they all conference together. The appellate justices do before oral argument, though, so they usually have a draft opinion before oral argument happens, where they go over. Somebody asked if Meg has like about the defamation stuff, and I don't know. I think defamation is always kind of a hard legal area, but I mean, Cardi B's kind of paved the way with the Tasha K lawsuit in Atlanta, which that's one that I could start covering the bankruptcy proceedings on that, because I think that's an interesting legal issue. I know her attorney a little bit because she was here in Orange County when Cardi was on trial for the album art, that lawsuit over the tattoo on the album art. So, and I think Lisa Moore is still the one doing the bankruptcy proceedings on that. So I think that'd be interesting to watch. And whether she has a good chance, I don't know. I think celebrities, like people who are in that, they at least have a position like that's like worthwhile, just in terms of like damages, because when you're suing somebody, you're trying to get money out of them, damages. And with personal injury suits, if you have like a car accident, catastrophic injury, you have medical bills, there's like obvious damages. But for defamation and harassment, it's pain and suffering, reputational loss. So private citizens, I mean, pain and suffering is always kind of a hard one with a jury, but reputational loss, I think, would be a lot easier for a famous person to argue. So, maybe, but I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards like we might never see anything on it, and especially with her just wanting to move on and kind of the toll this has taken. I mean, if there was a defamation lawsuit, if they're serious about going to trial, it would be another really long process and everything. So that's what I was thinking about. Because I do want to get into the Lizzo lawsuit. I think in the very beginning, everybody is just giving those people what they want, which is just massive amounts of publicity, because it legitimizes them to have lawyers with them. Because I mean, if a couple of her ex-employees just went to E! Online and just wanted to go on video complaining about her, I mean, I think even those websites would not really give them the time of day. Maybe they would, I don't know. But they get so much more legitimacy when they have the lawyer sitting next to them. So it's kind of like just this big PR blitz that they all go on. But there's like some lawsuits that are obviously filed for PR purposes, and other lawsuits that seem a lot more serious and are filed to get real damages. And an example of that would be Vanessa Bryant's lawsuit over the Kobe Bryant crash photos, which was like the best trial that I've ever covered in terms of how good the lawyers were and how good the case was, and the shocking lies of these public officials. Because I think on first glance, people wonder, people kind of might roll their eyes at the idea of a really rich person getting 30 million, because I mean, she doesn't need any more money, but that was Vanessa Bryant's only route. And what the cops did on that was like crazy, and all the lying in that trial was like really nuts too. So that would be a good one to talk about. Although it's pretty much over, I think there might actually still be some kind of settlement that Judge Walter needs to finally approve. But when you get into Lanez's the letters, this is back to the story I was just scrolling through, and this reminded me, because his generosity and how he wants to help people pay their legal fees and everything. I mean, it's good for him, but you kind of wonder. And when I was reading this, I'm like, dude, it really looks like Lanez is getting ripped off by these people. I mean, they're taking advantage of him. They depend on him for their payroll and stuff. And these are nonprofit organizations, but nonprofit, like usually somebody is profiting off those, because most of nonprofits' budgets are salaries for their staff. So I think, some of these people are being helped, but when you really read into all this criminal justice reform and the litigation that's happening under it, there are a lot of attorneys who are taking advantage of this and banking on this and getting huge legal fees from the families of people who are just really desperate to get their loved ones home, and they're taking advantage of them. And it just looks like, Lanez's generosity and his own willingness and wanting to help people who are in bad situations with the criminal justice system. You just hope that the lawyers aren't, you just wonder what kind of quality legal work is he actually paying for here. And I don't know. I mean, I cringed when they were describing Unite the People and saying that they offer low bono legal services, which obviously means they can't just offer it for free. They have to charge something about it. But I don't know. When I was reading this, I was like, I wonder if Lanez is kind of being taken advantage of here. All the money he's been shelling out for these legal fees for people who say that they still haven't gotten their family members home, Yeah. I mean, I was talking about this with a woman who's a law clerk for so long, just the huge fees that attorneys charge for this kind of stuff. And if it doesn't work, it's not like they get their money back. It's like, oh, well, that's the system. It's like you just charge somebody $20,000 for a habeas petition that was never going to pass. And the clerk was like, it's so wrong that the attorneys do that. And it really is. But it's just hard to kind of weed out because who doesn't really actually have a legitimate case and who does. But so his managers, and hopefully everyone can go through and read the letters. And one thing, putting my watermark on these. I mean, when I put all the letters up, when I put all the letters up, either later today or tomorrow, I'm not going to put watermarks on them because frankly it just takes too long. But it's a whole different world in the hip hop world with this, because in the political world, I mean, I can't imagine Politico or Washington Post slapping a watermark on the Trump Georgia indictment, because it's a public record. It's everywhere. You should easily be able to get a copy of it. And I saw somebody on social media who's a big advocate for public records and court documents complaining and kind of shaming Rolling Stone for writing an article saying in a federal court document reviewed by Rolling Stone. And it was like, hey, Rolling Stone, maybe you could post a link to said court document and let people know that these court documents are online for you to read because they're public court documents. And I especially agree with that, with it being a federal case, because federal cases, court documents are so easy to find online. I mean, to put a watermark or something on a federal court document would just be totally silly, because like I said, they're everywhere. Courtlistener.com or courtlistener.org has everything linked to. But and then also when all the reporters were in the Georgia courthouse waiting for the indictment to be filed, of course there was live tweeting going on, and Kyle Chaney from Politico tweeted that people who aren't in the courtroom but copy tweets about minutia details without attributing it to reporters who are in the courtroom, he just said, "You look silly." And it's like, exactly, like in the political world, it just looks silly. In the hip hop world, it's freaking all it is. It's everybody just regurgitating and stealing from each other, and they become like the leading voices. And in the political world, people just kind of roll their eyes at that stuff. So, like I said, I kind of went back and forth on putting my watermark on this, but I'm like, look, it was a lot of work to get all this stuff and write it all up and put it all together. And these aren't just available online. It's not like Court Listener doesn't have any kind of access to the LA Superior Court documents. So another thing I noticed, there's just so much misinformation about access to court documents, and then court streaming trials online and whether trials can be televised. Because I had retweeted somebody a couple days ago, Lawrence Hurley, he's the Supreme Court reporter for NBC News, had retweeted Ryan Riley, who's the justice reporter for NBC News, saying that, oh, it's too bad that we don't have cameras in the J6 indictment hearings because the judge's facial expressions right now would make a great GIF. And Lawrence Hurley was like, this is why there aren't cameras allowed in the courtroom. And exactly. I mean, I retweeted it because, yeah, that's why judges don't want to allow cameras in their courtroom, because everything just becomes like a social media moment and just like a little thing to get clicks. But somebody replied to it and they're like, stop lying. Literally every major trial has been televised in the last year. I'm like, okay, guys, like, I'm just going to say it. This is why mainstream society does not take you seriously. Mainstream society does not take these hip hop blogs seriously. Mainstream society does not take Tory Lanez seriously. It's just, and it's comments like that kind of underscore it. That guy has no idea what he's talking about. He named like the Melly trial, the Randolph trial, which I had to Google. I was like, who the hell is that? It's like the guy in Nevada who's on like his sixth wife or something, fucking crazy. But I mean, it's Law and Crime Network is streaming it. But the idea that those were the biggest, most high profile trials, no. Like, I mean, think about, Pros Michael, that not only had the hip hop aspect to it, but all the political stuff and national security stuff that was going on with it. One of the reasons that wasn't high profile is because it was high profile, but it wasn't televised because it's in federal court. Federal court does not allow cameras in court at all. So Tory Lanez is a human. I agree. It's a factual statement right there. So the idea that the high profile trials are always streamed. No, they're not. I mean, what about the civil trial? And nothing in the Southern District of New York is ever streamed because there's no cameras in federal court. But E. Jean Carroll, the advice columnist against who sued Trump for rape. And I mean, the whole question for the jury was to decide whether the former president of the United States is more likely than not a rapist. That was a pretty huge trial, and that wasn't streamed online. And what Lawrence was talking about, what Ryan are talking about, is the DC indictment for Trump. It's not going to be it's not going to be televised. And the idea that U.S. District Court is ever going to change that and allow cameras in court, I think is not going to happen, especially for Trump's trial. But LA Superior Court is just up to the judge whether to allow cameras in, and most of them don't. We had with the Robert Durst trial, the judge allowed it. The judge in the Nipsey Hussle trial allowed not streaming of the whole thing, but reporters could have laptops and cameras, but it wasn't streamed the entire time. And I think the big reason a lot of judges are reluctant to do it is because exactly what the tweets said about, oh, this would make a great GIF. I mean, we saw it with the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, the way that just became consumed. And I kind of cringe at the idea of federal trials starting to be televised. So all these people just sit online and stream them and are just making money off these things. U.S. District Court is never going to start televising trials. But the idea that like the Melly trial and like the Travis Randolph, like the trials that Law and Crime Network streams are the most high profile trials. They get a lot of attention just because they're so accessible, but they're definitely not the biggest trials going on. It's just a matter of the court system. You do see a lot of trials streamed out of Florida just because Florida has such good open records law. I think Florida pretty much allows streaming of pretty much all trials. We had the Melly trial, but then there was that rapper a few months ago. His trial was streamed online. I mean, the Casey Anthony trial that Jose Baez did 12 years ago, that was all online. We see a lot of trials streamed from Wisconsin, and I think Nevada has pretty good open streaming laws too. LA Superior Court, though, one I remember Kathy at Law and Crime Network, who's the executive producer, said one problem with LA Superior Court, even when they do allow streaming and cameras in court, it's so the scheduling, you only get like 3 hours of trial time in a day, so sometimes it can be not worth it to show up. No, and I know, I mean, the Melly trial was definitely interesting, but I mean, there are all these political trials going on in federal court that are really big too. Like I said, Pros Michael was a really, really big one, but it didn't feel as high profile to some people because it wasn't being streamed online. But the Melly trial is in Florida, and Law and Crime Networks was streaming the whole thing. So for some it feels more like a bigger deal, but yeah, I'm gonna sign off here. And like I said, I think it's better I went through these all in the last stream, but if people want to go, just check out the article and see it online. And I'll have another one on the final one, the other celebrity letters, and then the friends and family. Okay, yeah. Oh, that's not the one that I meant to. A lot of trials, and this is true, a lot of trials do get televised, but I am not nitpicking when I say that federal court does not televise trials. And there are a lot of big trials that happen in federal court. Vanessa Bryant's lawsuit, again, over the Kobe Bryant crash photos trial, did you guys see any of that televised? No. It's like there's big trials that happen in federal court, but they don't get televised. And then the ones that do are the Law and Crime Network cases, which are interesting. I mean, the Melly trial is interesting, especially in the hip hop world. He's pretty well known. He was up and coming. A double murder case like that, a death penalty case like that, it's a big case. But I'm just saying there's tons of other cases like that would take on maybe the high profile status if they were streamed. But federal court does not allow cameras in court, and I don't think they ever will. And LA Superior Court should more, but it's just a cluster. It's like Wisconsin and Florida just seem to have like the best laws on that. So yeah, and I mean, Ellis talked about this. Ellis, was it Pacheco, who knows who's been managing Tory's business finances, talked about how things are in disarray. And he'd started building a nest egg, but an accountant did some things that were not in his best interest, and he had to write the IRS a multi-million-dollar check. So Jose Baez asked him if he was being paid right now for managing Lanez's business, and he said no. So I saw somebody say that Lanez will be able to pay everything off with his all the money he's going to make from his free Tory shirts. So. And the big thing is, and I could see it with his fiance now, their courtroom engagement announcement. But she talked about, and her mom talked about in her letter too, about how Lanez has always provided for his son and her. I mean, he's always made sure that they were taken care of. So I think in just going through the letters, like the article says, there's so many people that depended on him for their livelihoods. And the woman who managed his tours even said that she would talk to him about trying to limit the number of people that he had on tours and the amount of money that he was spending, but he never wanted anyone left out. So it just seems like some of the other letters talked about how a lot of people capitalized on his success and then abandoned him when he needed them most. But it just seems like financially he's not in the best spot. But like somebody said, maybe all the free Tory shirts will give him the money to make up for that. Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'll take them. The Stefflon Dawn letter, she like I said, she writes it under her legal name, but she talks about the song that they did back in 2018. They've got the song and the music video to it. She talks about how that had such an impact on people, and it really exemplifies his work as an artist. The Senseless remix, she talked about that. So I'll get into that and get them all up there. And like I said, some of his friends had some touching letters, especially one kind of got to me, but I didn't want to just put them all out there. They're private citizens, and it to me, it's somebody who covers a lot of sentencing. It just exemplifies like what people go through, like what people's family members and friends go through for criminal defendants where they're sentenced and that kind of thing. Oh, Central Park 5, right. But yeah, well, like I said, we should be getting the transcripts later of Megan's testimony. If the people who are just reading transcripts, experts, are just focusing on like one sentence, if they could actually just post like a PDF of the entire transcript, that'd be great. I don't know why they wouldn't do that, but because that's the big thing is those transcripts cost money, and obviously those people are getting them from Tory's camp, so they don't have to pay for them. But I'm kind of prioritizing paying for right now the transcripts from the sentencing hearing because that's what just happened. But I've talked about, doing like a GoFundMe or something. We all just get the money together and get all the transcripts for the trial. But I'll talk to the court reporter about that. Like I said, nobody from Tory's team has just sent me transcripts. But if anybody wants to do that, I'd be happy to help distribute them and put them out there. But I just feel like when you look at the way they're being used and the people who are being used who are using them right now, it's disingenuous, guys. You're not doing this to inform the public. But anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. Like I said, I'll have the article soon on Stefflon Don's letter and just kind of wrapping everything up. And then I do want to do a live next week on the Smokey Robinson trial. I'm going to have the article hopefully like Monday or Tuesday on Smokey's testimony, because it was pretty awesome that they it basically doubled as like an oral history of Motown, but it kind of interweaved with his claims against this guy because he really didn't like this guy who was suing him. And I've always said that the best way to see celebrities is to see them in court because it's so authentic the way you see them. And Smokey Robinson's like the nicest guy in the world, but he was a little stressed out at this trial because he doesn't like this guy who's suing him. He doesn't want to have to pay him anything. And then when jury deliberations were stretching on, I mean, it's just uncomfortable for everyone and you just don't know what the jury's going to do. So, he was getting a little nervous like on Monday. And when they had these questions, it was just interesting to see him interact with his attorneys because it's just this authenticity to celebrities in a courtroom setting that you would never get anywhere else. So, yeah, well, and somebody says transcripts are online. People are reading them on live streams. Yeah, dude, and I don't have 3 hours to just sit and listen to somebody who like doesn't have very good voice inflection and didn't think to maybe have one person be the attorney and one person be the witness instead of just having one voice read the entire thing. People can't listen to that shit, dude. You guys need to figure out a better way to present this information. And if there is a link right now to the entire transcript, like, please send it to me because that's what the public needs to see, not your little piecemeal version of it, You guys are just such dumb douchebags. How about I just block you all from here, you fucking morons? I mean, really, like, where is the link from? Like, where is the transcript link? Like, said all the transcripts are online. Great. Like, where's the link to the entire transcript? You listen. I don't have time, dude. I've got work to do. Like, they're so stupid. Look, guys, the case is over. Like I said, I mean, the reason there hasn't been a motion for bail, probably financial. These guys don't work for free. I mean, the idea that, free Tory, if you just sell enough t-shirts, it's gonna work. I mean, oh, it's such a joke. Why are you? Yeah, I'm so upset that people are finding out info. I'm so angry at you people for finding things out. How could you do this? Find things out? No. Where's the actual transcript? Where's the transcript, guys? Oh, here's funny. Case isn't over. No, I mean, you're right. There's going to be an appeal, but it's going to be like 2 years before it's resolved. So, oh man, oh, you guys are funny. Definitely time to end when we just stop talking about things and like the 5 people just kind of take over. Yeah, there was no bail hearing. They haven't filed any kind of motion yet. And Baez isn't going to do that for free. So I don't know if he has like some yacht in Turks he needs to get to now, but I don't know if we're going to see that, but we might eventually. Yeah, it's not that they disagree with me. It's just that you guys are just so flat wrong about everything. I mean, everything. You're just full of it and you're disingenuous. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just ignore I mean, that's the time. This thing's winding down. I stopped saying anything of substance a while ago. So, Megan is a narcissist. All right. See you guys later. Thanks for seriously. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It was a pretty good one. But like I said, I think next one is going to be all Smokey Robinson with Craig from Law 360. So it might take a little bit to schedule that just because he's usually in court, but I just have to send him an email and his Law 360 people will take care of it. But it'll be a great discussion because he saw the entire trial and really understands the intricacies of the contract dispute and the different ways that he could have won, that kind of thing. So it should be a good one, probably next week. So yeah, check it out. See you guys later.